it's yeah, it's a great opportunity to be here with you and to share some of the research and some of the reflection we have been doing in our institution, and eventually with the teaching experience we have in higher education field. So I would like again to ask you sorry for the need to update this schedule and to reschedule for this moment, this meeting, this small meeting, and really would like to appreciate all your efforts and all your patience to be here with us. So if you agree, we can start for a small presentation in which I would highlight some of the particular issues of project-based learning. I could give you a couple of examples in the end of the presentation, and we can open then a space and time for questions, and well, I will try to answer all of them. Is it okay for you?
Yeah, yes, it's okay for us, I think, yeah.
Well, thank you. Of course, I have a presentation prepared, but please feel free to make questions, interrupt me once you wish, and do this more secure and interactive space as you would like. So I will share my screen. Yeah. Do you see the PowerPoint now? Yeah.
Yes, we can.
I will put this in full screen. Yeah. So, well, the name of the session is not very creative, but as we talk, we'll try to highlight some of the most demanding issues of the course. But I would like to get you really comfortable to interrupt or question in the meanwhile what you wish, of course. So the main idea, you will see, of course, some of the slides are similar or the same as previous PowerPoints, but just to highlight some of the issues. Just to start, we are exploring project-based learning in this project. Why is there so enthusiasm? Why is there so much enthusiasm about this methodology? Well, you saw probably in the history learning object that with the development of learning theories, but also from the expertise, from the experiments of higher education teachers, some examples, some innovative methodologies arise. Project-based learning is very similar. It gets some of this experience from problem-based learning. That is cognitive. Some authors say it's a constructivist, but there are some doubts between problem and project-based learning. If project-based learning is clearly a constructivist learning methodology, in problem-based learning it's not so clear that they underpin the same theoretical background. But well, as you see here in some articles, very recent ones, some others are a little older, but many authors claim that PBL approach is highly recommended methodology for higher education, but also for K-12 students. Once it allows students, but also teachers, to integrate theory and practice, to develop scenarios, projects that are much connected with students' expertise, to students' previous knowledge. And while they are learning the contents of the courses, they will be involved in research in order to develop innovative and creative outputs for their schools, for their environments, and for their communities. So PBL is an approach in which we join theory and practice. We promote the voice and choice of students. We intend to promote their motivation, but also their skills, particularly their skills. The focus is not only the so-called hard skills or the contents or scientific knowledge, but also this possibility to transfer that knowledge into practice and to put that knowledge in the field. As you see here, it's one of the best exemplars of constructivist learning environment. Well, we have to point out here that, in fact, we all have been probably, quite probably, trained in a directive learning context in which teacher was the center and student, well, do their work in order to retain, to learn from teachers' exposition. There are some criticals to this methodology, this traditional methodology. And the new methodologies, as problem-based learning, game-based learning, there are several ones, have been supported by research. And in fact, in project-based learning, we have good indicators in terms of efficacy, not only in students, but also in teachers' perspective. Oh, well, we'll have the opportunity to talk a little more about this later on. This enthusiasm for PBL results in two important developments. First, the Revolution in Learning series. You know, the first series are mainly behaviorist, and in behaviorist theory, we present little parts of the contents. We present little parts of the contents. We expose, we train with students. We give them feedback. We give them a grade, and then we go up to the second content, and we present in the same structure. Little of content, some practice, and then feedback. From the behaviorist theories, we go up to the cognitivist theories. In this one, the most important was to involve students in discovering, in problem solving. And so the context is a little more complex. So teachers explain the significance of that content. They connect with the reality. They give some schemas. They give some abstracts. They use paraphrases in order to connect, in other words, the content with the practice. But the major change arrived with the constructivist theory. One of the main authors is Lev Vygotsky, Russian psychologist, that has a lot of influence in educational science and even in psychology and sociology and so on, particularly in what concerns to student and teachers relationship. In constructivist theory, we assume that students have knowledge, have experience, have a lot of previous skills, and we use that information, we use those skills to build up new knowledge. Lev Vygotsky said that in each moment, we as teacher teachers are evaluating what students know, and based on that, we help students to go to a more complex stage, and that will, well, highlight the efficacy of learning. So the major contribution is from constructivist theory that puts the students in the center of the learning activity. The students will be the center of the learning activity and the center of the classroom. And that is a perspective that is really different from the traditional one. A part of this knowledge that we know now from learning theories, we know that society changed a lot in the couple of decades. Well, during the 20th century, but particularly since the second part of the 20th century. So schools have evolved a lot in the last decades, but also technology, society, and all the context of work. So we have to understand that school would need or should feel the need to update their methods and adjust to a society that is, of course, in a very rapidly changing process. Yeah. Onur is talking about the social constructivist one recently. Yeah, exactly that. In the social constructivist, well, the role of the relationships and the interconnection between the person and society is even stronger than the previous one. Well, exactly that one. So we have a lot of new information about learning theories. We have new process. We have new buildings. We have new technological devices and tools. So this put some pressure in schools and universities to prepare students for this new global world. Not only seated in their places in the classroom, but also or particularly develop their skills, their collaboration skills, their communication skills, their creativity, critical thinking. That are some skills that in regular classrooms are most difficult to enhance. So if in the traditional perspective of teaching and learning process, the professor is a center of the learning and knowledge, in PBL, we assume that student then takes the center stage. Is the students that have an opportunity to reflect with teacher about, of course, the goals, the content, but particularly the application of these goals and contents into practical outputs. And this change, of course, has been discussed in several universities and teacher training centers. One of the ones that we really follow is the BIA, Buck Institute for Education. That's an American institution that is dedicated only to PBL. They do research, they do teachers training, and they publish a lot of books, handbooks to promote PBL in schools. Of course, they work particularly or especially with K-12 grades, but they are being used as a reference also for universities. We did some research with them in the past. We published some papers, and we keep in touch, not only discussing about their expertise, learning with their experience, but also trying to update as much as we can to our reality. And they claim that there are 7 essential elements of PBL. First is, well, present a challenging problem or question to students. The issue here is, in teaching we are used to give students the correct answer, the most accurate theory and learning. But if you want to put students in the center of the stage, the best way, as Jean Piaget already stated in the 50s, would be presenting them some challenge, allow them to discover, put them working in the center of the classroom. How? Creating some challenging problem or some driving question. Okay. Something that we capture from the news, from new articles, from the epidemiological statistics or so on. And that will be the driving question for the project. During this process, we have, as teachers, to be they have a very interesting expression that is the critical friend. So we as teachers are the experts. So we have to question students about their goals, make them think about their aims, and with questions, with the accurate feedback, sustain their search and drive them. Our goal is to drive them into some output that is scientifically correct and appropriate to the goals of the course. There is a question here. Emre, is your, I said correctly your name? Emre?
Yeah, yes, yeah. Emre. My name is Emre.
Well, thank you for your question. Well, it's difficult to have challenging problems. Yeah, it's true. But when we are in a discussion with peers and so on, we can generate in a close and secure context some ideas for the future. I will give you some examples in the end of the session, and we'll discuss about this. But it's true, of course. Well, and thank you for the question. The idea is not that PBL will work perfectly in all contexts and all years and all courses. Of course, there are context courses and years that is more appropriate than others. So you may feel free to use PBL if it applies. Of course, in some content or some particular issues, PBL could not be the most recommended practice. We have to discuss about that, and that is a very interesting question. But the point is, to project-based learning, we need to draw some challenging problem or some driving question. Well, sustain an inquiry to students in project that must be as much authentic as possible. When we talk about authentic, the idea is much closer to the reality as possible. For students is many times difficult to understand why they have maths or why they have ethics or psychology or whatever. So we have to, as teachers, show them why that course or why that goal, why that content is important for their professional development pathway or personal development pathway. So in each project, we have to understand, we have to foresee some output, and that output must be real, must be authentic, must be demanding for them, from their schools or for their communities. The idea is this one. Students should have voice and choice. Since the early years, we know that students want to participate in in their classrooms and in their learning. If you have kids or you have familiar ones that are younger, you know that when they go to school, they don't know the letters and they want to read. So they have some kind of motivation. Psychologists say some intrinsic motivation to learn. But as we go on in our school pathway, we tend not to be so involved as in the beginning. So in many courses, students don't have any voice and choice. They don't have ways, they don't have means to participate, to choose themes, to choose the way they are evaluated. Even in some cases, they don't have much space to participate doing questions or introducing themes from the quotidian or whatever. So in PBL, we assume that students are in the center of the classroom, so they should have what we call voice and choice, opportunity to choose how they would apply their knowledge, in what field. In the broad sense of the course, is there any part they would be specialists? Well, they should have this opportunity, and we'll see how it could be done. Then promote the reflection. We usually say that our students do not reflect, don't have a critical perspective of their world and current time and so on, but we usually also don't give them a lot of opportunities to reflect. So in each of the assessment tasks, we should have opportunity for them to reflect what they learn, why they learn, what that is useful, beneficial for them. Reflection is a central component of their learning, and we have to create spaces for them to practice this one. Do a continuous critique and revision. The idea is that we will present them a driving question. We'll give them the resources for them to plan and execute their project. And our goal and our role is to give them assistance. We have to, or we should, give them feedback about what they are doing, why they are doing, what they can do best, what they are reading, why they are reading those authors, what those authors bring them beneficial to the project. And our process is continuous and much focus on feedback. We have to criticize and give them opportunity to review and go as far as they can in their project. And in the end, they should present their learning in a public audience or to a public audience. We used to say that for our experience of plagiarism, you know that plagiarism is a problem in higher education, in all grades and so on. Mostly because when you present a written test or a work, an essay or so on, that is only between the students and the teachers. And one of the recommendations that authors from plagiarism prevention say this: if you have to present your essay, your work, to a public audience, to a larger audience, you will prepare them better. You will try to do your best. So the public audience is a central part of project-based learning. You should, in every project, share what you learn, with your community. And your community could be your colleagues in the classroom, could be other colleagues from other classroom, could be the whole school, could be the teachers of your course. Well, you could do a poster and present it in your hall. The public audience could be, I don't know, some kind of wiki. You can create a wiki and present it to a larger audience. In your university, you can create a blog and you present the projects by video or in a short essay to a larger audience. We learn with our masters, of course, and the idea is to share what we learn with all the community, with all the society, and give back what we learn for the beneficial of everyone. Yeah, one of the issues that Emre question is very interesting. It's a very interesting question. When we use teacher-based pedagogies, the traditional methods, one of the major benefits is the efficiency. When you give students the right theory, the right issues, you conduce them into to the best place in the most simple and with less time possible. And that is very useful, particularly with larger classes. When we have classes of, I don't know, 100 students, it's really difficult to implement project-based learning only with one teacher. So PBL might demand more time to implement this show. What we try to balance is, of course, the time we have in class with the autonomous work that students should perform in their daily life. I don't know exactly in Turkey how do you work, but we have the ECTS system, and for each class, for each course, we have a number of hours that are predicted to be in the classroom, and then a larger amount of hours that should be performed out of the classroom. And that allows us, yeah, thank you, that allows us to manage the time we have in class, but also the autonomous work hours. And of course, we give some hours dedicated to the project, to sum up, to revision, and so on. But that issue of the time is a relevant one. Of course, for the other side, we have to think that we assume that in traditional methodology, students learn more because they are receiving the information, they will read, they will learn with that experience. But that is not completely correct. So many times it's better, it's most efficient to select the main references, the main issues, and give them more time to develop their skills, then go to a larger amount of issues, and they don't learn as much as in PBL do. Well, I don't know how we are in terms of time. Yeah, okay, 40. So we have in mind the main general principles. Create a scenario. The idea of creating a scenario is to promote the curiosity and involvement in the task. You will see later on, we can use a lot of media outputs, some videos, documents, films or statistics to promote curiosity and involvement in the task. Define the starting question and learning objectives. Well, it's very important to know that in PBL, we assume that the goals of the course are exactly the same. The syllabus are the same. We only change the table around but students doing their jobs instead of being quite peacefully seated in their place, learning to teachers. Give students freedom and responsibility. We know that when we give students some freedom, they will be more responsible for their roles and their tasks. So this is something that they really like, of course, and they appreciate their freedom. Usually they correspond in terms of responsibility once they feel they are involved in the course and they are important in that issue. Promoted so-called 21st century skills. Yeah, we know that particularly with the technologies, but not only a result of the technology, but we know that students now have lots of difficulties collaborating with each other, communicating with each other, practicing critical thinking and so on. So we have to do it intentionally, not expecting them to develop with their traditional works, but give them opportunity to collaborate in classroom, And how can they collaborate? Well, we have to create opportunities for them to collaborate in the classroom. Communicate. We usually say that our students have a lot of difficulties doing a presentation, an oral presentation. Well, but if they didn't have the chance to practice those kind of skills before, it's quite natural that they have some difficulties. So we have to create opportunities, intentional opportunities for promoting collaboration, critical thinking. Of course, the use of ICTs is mandatory nowadays and so on. While we are working, raise new questions, promote critical thinking, give feedback, monitor and review. So our work is much this one. Be a part of them and closer to know everything they are doing in each moment. And I like the importance to work for a real audience. Good projects don't happen by chance. We have to practice, and even ourselves, we have to reflect and discuss with our colleagues to refine, of course, in order to get the most interesting project as possible. You are doing, I imagine, a draft version, and the idea is to help you to put your ideas into a Word file, into a first draft, because it's important to revise and to improve in this discussion with colleagues and so on before implementing it. We usually go to a classroom and give a small talk about an issue, and we are so much trained with that methodology that we don't even need to plan and to make a lot of time to prevent eventual issues that might occur. In project-based learning, we have to prevent all the possibilities. We have to plan all the tasks in order to have everything work as possible, as well as possible. The relationship with students, as you imagine, is a very close relationship. We assume that promoting a safe, secure, and empathetic relationship in the classroom is determinant for the success of the projects. We are always in contact with the students in the classroom, and unfortunately, many times by email, and while we are not in the classroom, we have the opportunity to answer to some doubts and give some counseling and so on. how to get started, develop a broad idea, decide the scope of the project, select the performance standards, incorporate simultaneous results. This was the main slide of the issue to plan the projects. Please feel free to interrupt me if you wish. Usually questions are or driven to explore a standpoint, a philosophical, theological, and arguable issue. For example, do you think we are in an inclusive system? Imagine that I'm a professor of sociology or anthropology or political science. Do you think that our society is inclusive? This could be a driving question for the classroom or for our project. What are the best policies to promote peace or to promote welfare, promote health? These are examples of questions that might be useful for driving a project. Other kind of projects are more practical, driven to look at here to a problem that needs to be solved or a product that needs to be developed. We don't go to that philosophical or theoretical issue that was previously presented, but we can ask students, how do you promote learning? How do you promote inclusion? How do you promote peace in a context that, like the one we are facing now? How we can contribute to promote sustainable behaviors in your university or city? This idea of connecting the problem to be solved with our reality in our city and our university is very interesting for students, because it will demands them to know their reality, to question their practices and the context they live in, and to adjust the theoretical information to a very real situation as their city or their university or whatever. Suggestions. Good questions are not the first version, so we have to make a very first version and then try to reflect the implications, or where that question could lead us. What are the other possible ones? We have to think in a question and what that question leads us to. They should afford students the possibility to go as deep as possible into a given topic. The idea of the project is not searching for a solution. Only one solution is possible, but opens to different kind of solutions, and they have to argue, they have to sustain, they have to well, get theoretical support or empirical support to one possible solution that they will present you. And we have here some examples of questions. Do we need to worry about global warming in our city? Look, to answer to this question, students will have to say what is global warming, what's their implications in terms of our normal living, and they have to discuss what are those implications in our right context where we live. How can we reduce bullying? How can we contribute to public health? Well, there are some examples. Of course, these are closer to our main topics, but you can also think about other ones that are closer to your reality or the course you teach. To prepare a scenario, we can go to newspapers, to epidemiological studies, relevant news, reflections with peers, the contact with institutions. There are a lot of contexts in which we can have some suggestions for for this scenario. We can use the syllabus of the course and considering their goals, discuss with students what they can do with that learning, what are the outputs that can arise from that course and so on. Link the project to local, national, professional or academic events. All of us are connected with our scientific associations, and we can try to use events, congresses, newsletters and so on to involve students to some search of new knowledge. In terms of scope, we have, well, usually we don't have projects with less than 2 weeks. Usually projects should have 3-4 weeks, but they can be longer. Less than 2 weeks is very difficult to sustain that is a project. Could be a problem, could be a problem-based learning. We can give them a problem, they have 1 week to solve it. But to draw a question, to argue some point and to present a solution, it's really difficult to have even 2 weeks. We should have 3-4 weeks to have some complex project. In terms of amplitudes, we can draw a project in one course, in our course, but we can join to other colleagues from other courses of the same year or other year and join students to the same project. We know that there are some projects that has less technology, others use technologies as the mean to do research, and others are even based on technology. The range of the scope, we can do a project based only in our classroom, but also in our school, university, or community, and even the people involved. We can involve only the teacher of the course, but we can join teachers of different courses. We can join teachers with professionals, for example, of internships or institutions of the community, and even the audience could be quite different according to the scope of the project we want to decide. We can give more participation to students or less, more autonomy, less autonomy. Of course, we have to think if we are in the first year of the course, of course, we give them a little less autonomy. As we go to higher grades, we tend to give them more autonomy and give them more space to participate in their courses. We have to adjust, of course, to the knowledge of our students and our classrooms. Set standards. We have the success of the project depends on the aims and the assessment practices. So we have to understand how the project will be evaluated, how it will be assessed. Do we use only self-assessments? That would be a risk, of course. We'll use a test, or we'll revise and criticize, evaluate based on a poster, an essay, working text, or whatever. To do this, we have to identify the end projects, the products of the project. We have to identify very clearly the deliverables, the milestones, and select the artifacts for the evaluations. After deciding on the projects, we have to split the content and skills and write assessment scripts. We have to plan everything before the project is in place. We are usually evaluating, of course, even myself, I do written tests in some of the classrooms, in some of the courses, but we have in our disposal a lot of artifacts that we can use to evaluate, audio or video. For example, we are using Zoom to record this presentation, but I use Zoom, for example, to record students' participation or students' communication, oral presentation. We can use debates for students to debate about an issue. I use many times the posters that are very short works, but in which students have to introduce a lot of information, correct information, most appropriate one. Research reports, essays is very common. Essays is very common artifact to be used. So we have a lot of possibilities to evaluate our students. And according to the project, we have to think which are the best ones. It could be a test, and there is no problem using tests, written tests, but we try to use other artifacts that might be more aligned with the content and with the result of the projects. Include simultaneous results. We tend to use ICTs. For example, I usually teach statistics, and I really love to teach statistics. And we usually include the domain of ICTs, for example, for students to do their graphs and do their sheets, or we use APA style in formatting issues. So while we are doing a report for the statistics course, they were also training methodology, they were also training ICT, they were also training formatting issues. So we can think in our project if other similar or close skills, whether they be the 21st century skills or theoretical or methodological ones, could be included in the project. And so I bring you two examples. I don't know how much time we have, 1 hour. I bring you two examples of two courses that I'm teaching right now. I could bring you others, but these are two of the ones that I'm teaching now. One in the bachelor and the second one in the Master of Psychology, in Psychology. One of the courses that I'm teaching the name is Psychoeducational Intervention in Emerging Problems. This is one of the courses of the Masters in Psychology. You have here the aims. The aim is to explore assumptions and applications of psychoeducational intervention in diverse contexts. Well, probably you are not aware of these issues, but psychoeducational interventions is a very specific intervention technique to give patients, to give students, to give populations accurate information about the topic. Accurate information about the topic. Of course, we have literature about it. What is psychoeducational intervention? We have best practices to promote psychoeducational intervention. And what we train students is to use those kind of techniques to, as we see here, to emerging problems. What would be emerging problems? Well, you know that, for example, in addictions, we have a lot of research about behavioral addictions. We have lots of problems now about relationships, bullying, cyberbullying. We have a lot of children and young people who are in institution, fostering care, and so on. So the idea is to students to develop their skills in order to promote accurate psychoeducational intervention in these emerging problems. Of course, to do this, they have to master skills in design, evaluation. They have to plan, they have to evaluate needs, draw an intervention, sustain, theoretically that intervention and then implement them in given context in evaluating, of course. What is the driving question? Usually we start the course presenting the syllabus of the course, presenting the contents, the methodology, and the references. And the first moments, the first class and the second one, are exploring emerging problems. We go to the reference institution as WHO, the HBSC, Health Behavior in School-Age Children, the SPAS, between other references, and show students, you say, here we have a lot of problems to solve. So how could you promote health and well-being in a given situation? And so students have the syllabus of the course, they have a set of lectures planned in the semester, and they will have to develop a project to be implemented in a population to promote health and well-being in a given group or subgroup. For example, students can do how to promote health and well-being in foster care. They will select one foster care institution. They will make learning needs. They will do an evaluation. They will contact with the technicians, know the reality, the main needs, and so on, and they will draw one proposal to intervene in that institution. Or how can you promote health and well-being in a given organization? They will evaluate, create an intervention, and they will deliver that intervention, and they will evaluate, not only in their perspective, but also in the other stakeholders, the technicians, the participants, all of them will be involved in the evaluation. As you see, the driving question is quite broad. It's quite open. There is no unique solution to this driving question. There's no unique answer. So students will be involved and they will present alternatives. Hey, Professor, I would like to, well, for example, we are starting the course right now, and we are receiving children and youth from Ukraine. So I have a group that will develop a project to deal with trauma from refugees. How you promote health and well-being in refugees that are coming from Ukraine. Others will work about how to promote health and well-being in people homeless. We have in Braga institutions that are dedicated to homeless care and how to promote health and well-being, well, not well-being, but at least health, how to promote health in home care, homeless people. But other will work how to promote health and well-being in, or at least how to promote health in youth using technologies. Well, it's a very open question, and they can give us some proposals, some alternatives, and of course, I, as teacher, will know if that proposal fits to the goals of the course, and if that fits to that goals, I will give them suggestions, give them articles, give them some clues to do their research, and they will plan their project. If that is not in the scope of the course, I will tell them, of course, that it's a very interesting issue, but not exactly in the content or in the aims of our course. They will have to do it in another course, and invite them to think in other possibilities, give them some examples and involve students in the decision that they will have to take for their project. Here you have the syllabus of the course. So in the classroom, I will tell them briefly about the history and potential of this kind of intervention. I will show them references. I will show them where they should search about these emerging problems. I will give them information, references about best practices, and they will do their work. And we have to manage in our classroom. Imagine we have classes of 3 hours. In the first 1 hour and a half, I'll give them some small talk. In the other 1 hour and a half, they will work in groups to develop their project to be present in the end of the semester. The evaluation is continuous. You will have some sheets there that I register during the weeks of their work in groups, and the project will be implemented in institutions with a weighting of 75% of the grade, and we still have some 25% dedicated to an integration test of small but mandatory issues that they have to know. This is one of the examples in the master degree. As you see, there is a lot of connection to practice, and students really are involved in the drawing of the intervention, implementing the intervention, and then evaluating. The other example I brought you here is in the bachelor. In the first year, we have a course that is called Learning Psychology, or Psychology of Learning. This is a first year class, and so students are learning about what is learning, what are the different theories, what are the similarities, the differences, and so on, but also what are the emerging issues in research about learning psychology. So the driving question is not so connected to practice. In the bachelor, we tend not to expose students so much to practice because they are, well, building up their theoretical knowledge. So the driving question is how to promote learning in, and they will have to complete the sentence. How to promote learning in kindergarten, in elder care, or how to promote learning in vocational courses, how to promote learning in an online situation, well, or how to promote learning using technologies. So they will have to know what we know about learning, how to promote learning, best practices, and then apply it. Of course, the shoes of the particular issue or where they will apply, well, they will be the students in groups to decide. They will look to the content of the course. They have access to all the references. They will have my entire support, giving some 1 or 2 articles that they can use to start the research, and then they will go to the floor and to their research process in order to complete the project. Also here you have the syllabus, those different theories and so on, and evaluation. Here we give 60% to a written test. Well, this is one class of the first year, so that is not so many time dedicated to the project. There are more lecture-based classes, and 60% will be dedicated to a written test, where they have to give a broader idea of the different learning theories, and 60% will be dedicated to a project, a research work. In these 40%, the following criteria will be considered. So 60% appropriateness and relevance of the content, 10% conceptual correction and reflection, 10% correction in Portuguese, and 20% to the oral presentation of work. In the end of the course, of course, they will have to present what they learn. They have to, well, the idea is to celebrate what they find with this project, what they learn. And the spirit is very positive, not an inquiry, a public inquiry, but a celebration of what they learn. It's not exactly a synthesis of their work, but it's a different work they have to do in order to share with their colleagues what they learn with all these projects. These are two examples. Of course, they arrive mostly from my experience, from my practice, but I'm sure you have questions to perform, and I will be more than happy if I can answer to at least some of them. I hope that might be useful for you, and feel free to do the questions you think it might be necessary.
Thank you for the presentation, Paulo. And yes, is there any questions? No?
How is that possible?
Thank you very much for your presentation. I would like to ask one question. You shared to-do list, I think. What is your advice about not to-do list for the lecturers, for the teachers? Yeah, not to-do list. Do you have any advice for this?
Yeah. Well, I didn't thought about that, but it's a very interesting question. What you should not do is your question.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, first of all, you should not assume that students know nothing about the topic. Students always know something about the course, have some idea, and we'll have to consider that at least they have a broad idea of what the subject is, they have learned in other courses in the past and so on. So we should not assume that they know nothing about the issue. What they know might be wrong. Mm-hmm. What they know might be wrong, but we should explore what they know, what their expectancies, what they think they will benefit from the course and so on. We have to consider that they have previous knowledge, and it's based on that previous knowledge that we have to do something about that. Other things we should not do is assume that we know what is best for them. We have as researchers or as teachers, we know a lot of the issue that we are teaching. We are experts on that, and we can give them some hints, give them some ideas, some suggestions of projects, and that is very beneficial for them. To know that they can explore, they can follow some lines, some project that might be interesting for them, but we shouldn't take decision for them. Should give them the space allow them to do some research, to explore different ideas or alternatives, and give them some opportunity to choose an issue, an application that might be interesting for them and for their personal and professional development. Yeah, I think this too would be the most important principles. Assume that they know something, and we should not assume that they don't know anything about the topic. They know something already, and they have, or they should have, space to decide and to assume responsibilities in the development of the project. Yeah, that's a very good suggestion for one of our next slides. What not to do.
Thank you very much.
Welcome. Thank you. Yeah, one of the issues that we didn't explore too much in the presentation, and I'm trying to finish some things for the course, and I will try to detail as much as possible for the handbook that we are preparing, because one of the main difficulties in our first experiences is the evaluation process. We are much trained to correct tests and to correct written works and so on. But how can we evaluate collaboration? Or how can we evaluate communication or critical thinking or creativity? And that is very subjective. But for students, it's important to know what we expect from them. So having some kind of grids, having some kind of template, what could be good collaboration in groups, what could be good communication skills, what could be the expression of critical thinking, how that can be expressed, is something difficult for teachers, but is a very important resource to have in mind. So we are trying to create some sheets, some very simple sheets with what students have to perform, in order to teachers have the possibility only to check students show or didn't show as much as possible. Yes, some self-assessment and some peer assessment, but also teacher assessment also, because we have to at least randomly do some registration about communication, collaboration, and critical thinking and so on. So if we have some kind of sheet already prepared, of course open to discussion, and each teacher will adapt and adjust to their reality, but would be useful in order to have this daily tasks supervision that we have to perform. Yeah. In the end, the most purest theoreticals in PBL suggest that 60% of the grade, 60%, should be dedicated to the 21st century skills. Only 40% should be dedicated to the theoretical knowledge. What's their rationale? The rationale is that the most important is to develop the skills. And if we have the skills, we'll have the opportunity to put them into place and to use them in a given situation. So if we want to strengthen their role in the course, we have to give them a higher percentage in the grades. So some authors say that we should evaluate in 40% the content and 60% the skills, either in the final product as in during the project.
Sure, it's quite reasonable because it's long-standing. If our motivation is just to enable them to use the soft skills, I mean collaboration and communication, so that will be long-standing. Not that will be beyond the project they produce. So
yeah, very well. Yeah, but doing projects, well, research says that this changing from traditional to a project-based learning methodology is quite demanding for teachers. Well, the first projects are difficult. So if you are feeling some difficulty, you have to be aware that that is really common. But the idea is that we still improve our practice, and this first step is very important to go a little longer and try to do things that are different from the regular, because that will differentiate not only our practice but also our course and in the end our university. There are very interesting examples. For example, in UK, they in 2014 create one university from the scratch in PBL methodology. It was an engineering university, and how it works, it was a factory. And all of the classes was performed in that factory. When students have to learn some more theoretical content, they will go to a classroom, a meeting room, where they have the theoretical parts. All of the practical assignments were performed in the factory. When they teach in projects, they receive projects from abroad, they work on them, and they deliver to the clients. And there are really exciting experience in higher education using, well, not only PBL, but in PBL you can certainly see that. And I would also stress that in the end, this really does difference in student skills. This really does a lot of difference in students' skills. Well, in Portugal, as other countries, you certainly have K-12 schools using PBL. Here in Portugal, we have a school that is very well known for this methodology. And one of the courses I teach in educational psychology, I take the students to visit that school. And usually students with 20, 22, 23 years feel absolutely astonished with the skills that those students that are trained in a PBL context demonstrate, not only in collaboration, but communication or whatever. Because this is something that we have to, of course, we have to try to use in university, but it will be also very important to promote it in earlier years in order to develop these skills as early as possible.
Okay.
Mustafa is here. One question. Could you put some more light on the key difference between PBL and doing projects, assigning students project tasks and hands-on activities? Mustafa, where do you saw that? In the presentation, or is
No, in our life we sometimes assign students projects, but it's still not a project-based learning.
Yeah.
What makes the difference?
Yeah, the difference is the method. In the platform, we present a draft version of the project, and I will send you, hopefully today or tomorrow, a full grid of project-based learning sheet, the project sheet. Well, and you'll have to see that to do good projects, we have to plan all the process of learning, from the driving question to the resources, to the participants, to the outputs, and so on. So what differentiates is the methods. We have, as you saw, best practices, but also very clear messages that we have to, not only message, but also strategies that we have to implement in order to achieve successful project. And that is not a very easy task to do. So the existence here of a community of practice in which teachers learn with their mates, with their colleagues, which they share their experience, is a very good pathway to achieve it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Elif, what you say? One last question.
Yeah, that's a really good question that Mustafa asks. Also, it's a good driving question, you know.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other questions from our participants? Ebru Hocam, maybe you, or Abdullah Hocam, Kübra, Gamze Hocam.
Yeah, feel free.
Any questions?
Yeah, go while you are thinking. Well, you have one word.
Yes.
That's it.
Thank you for a grateful presentation.
Thank you very much for the attendance.
Gamze Hocam is raising her hand, I think.
Hands, yes. Gamze Hocam, you can. Yes.
Hi again. I want a question. I'm a lecturer in vocational high school in Eskişehir University. We have 55 students in a course in health care courses in here. What do you think about implement courses for PBL project-based learning? What do you think about this? Because students with patient in healthcare, and in the other hand, I have different lessons, only unique reply question, and only I have healthcare implement students. And what do you think about
Healthcare. Yeah.
healthcare implement lessons or courses? How can I use?
Yeah,
Maybe
well.
communication problem, maybe because my field, my science field is business management and organizational psychology, organizational behavior, my science, because what do you think about this?
Yeah, very well. Well, I don't know if you saw in the presentation of the history. I don't know if that is completely clear, but one of the fields that is most common in problem-based learning is medicine. There's a lot of tradition in McMaster, in Maastricht, and even here in Portugal, we have some universities of health sciences that use problem and even project-based learning as a methodology for students learning in medicine or in health sciences and so on. And usually the results are quite good. Students tend to be involved and motivated using this methodology. Why? Because, well, there's a lot of reasons to justify it, but one of the main issues is that the knowledge is not only ticked in a box. The knowledge is interdisciplinary, and it demands for the students to connect between fields and areas of specialty and so on. So working in particular projects could be more demanding, more exciting, and increase the motivation of students. So the experience with health section is very, very interesting. Also in psychology, organizational behavior, organizational psychology, in marketing, in accounting, we have in the literature, and if you wish, you can send me some email. I can share with you some videos that we can find in YouTube. They are exciting examples of courses that are based on PBL, for example, in tourism, in managing, or organizational sciences, because we put students closer to the practice, giving some real cases, real examples, and they are much more motivated for this possibility to be closer from the field. And yeah, I think problem-based learning is very interesting methodology to this kind of courses. Yeah, completely. It's more difficult in some more theoretical fields. Imagine you have to teach languages. In that kind of subjects, it's more difficult to use PBL languages. Even in philosophy, would be possible, but it's more difficult because it's much theoretical, but it's possible once you can use the theory, all the readings, all the research to answer to questions, philosophical ones or theoretical ones. I would say that the most difficult subject, one of the main more difficult subjects is languages. You have a lot of experiences in physics, in chemistry, in maths, in sciences, in psychology. I don't know if you have this in mind, but we have the European diploma of psychology. And if you saw the diploma, they suggest the use of problem-based learning and project-based learning as a methodology to train psychologists. So there are even scientific organizations that stress universities to use other kind of methodologies to develop students' skills for the future. So we have a lot of things to do and to do in different ways from the other universities. Yeah, thank you very much. I don't know if I answered completely to your question. If you need, please feel free to send me an email and we can talk about that.
Thank you very much. Any other questions?
Thank you, Paulo, again.
Thank you
Thank you, Mr. Farm.
for your time.
You're welcome. Hope we'll have the opportunity to be together in Turkey, and I'm sure that will be more pleasant to discuss this in person.
Hopefully.
Yeah, well, sure.